Should I call my pediatrician? I'm Dr. Krupa Playforth. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and a mom of 3 and a content creator on social media trying to educate parents and answer questions. I have made different choices for each of my children. What I learned over the years, both from my own kids and then just seeing patients in clinic, is that there is no single best answer for every kid. For a lot of things, it's all about finding the right answer for that particular child, and it can be different even between siblings. When should I call my pediatrician? I always say you should trust your gut and see the pediatrician if you're concerned, but some concerns that I would have are if your baby is not gaining weight well, if you're having a lot of pain with feeding, or if the baby's struggling to feed, if you're having worries about your milk supply. These are all reasons to go check out your pediatrician. Some indications that a baby is struggling include poor weight gain, difficulty feeding or transferring milk, pain with feeding, or pain for mom with feeding. These would all be reasons to go talk to your pediatrician. What is colic, and what does that have to do with feeding? Colic is one of those diagnoses that people come to the pediatrician for, and we wish that we had better answers. I think the thing I want parents to know about colic is it will get better, I promise. But colic is defined as crying for over 3 hours, more than 3 days a week, and for longer than 3 weeks. So it's really exhausting if you are the parent of a baby that has colic. Usually the crying is towards the end of the day, but that's not always the case. We don't know what causes colic. There are a lot of reasons that a baby might cry. They're a baby. They are having pain with feeding, reflux, milk protein intolerance, gas. And so in those 3 months, if a baby's crying, it can be really hard to figure out what's going on. With that said, if your baby is crying that much, and especially if it is getting to you, if you feel like it is interfering with your mental health or you're worried about your baby, go check out the baby, go to your pediatrician. If you take your baby to the pediatrician because they're crying a lot, one of the first things we're gonna do is just sit down and take a full history. We're looking for patterns in things that you've noticed. For example, if the crying is around the same time of day, each day, if you've noticed that they cry more with feeding, or they cry whenever they're having gas or passing poop. These are all patterns that are helpful for us to figure out what's going on. Sometimes we can't, and I promise you that is just as frustrating for your pediatrician as it is for you. And we really wish that there was some kind of magical solution that we had for crying babies. If it does seem like, based on the history, that we can sense a pattern, for example, if the baby seems like they have reflux, or if they seem like they are struggling to feed, then we're going to troubleshoot that specific problem. But because babies cry for a lot of reasons, and because you can have more than one of these things, it can be really hard to figure out what's going on. So there's nothing wrong with you if you are struggling to figure out what the pattern is. Combo feeding is using both breast milk and formula, and figuring out what pattern of those two makes most sense for your baby and for your life. Some people will combo feed when they go back to work if they're worried about their milk supply. Some people will combo feed if their baby's not gaining enough weight, or if they're having trouble transferring milk at the breast. There's a lot of reasons to combo feed. What is triple feeding? Triple feeding is a short-term feeding strategy that we use in very specific situations to try to preserve milk supply as we're troubleshooting what might be interfering with a baby's ability to transfer milk effectively at the breast. Triple feeding is basically trying to do a little bit of a combination of 3 different things: breastfeeding, pumping, supplementing. First, you feed your baby at the breast. Then you pump immediately afterwards, and then you give your baby that pumped milk. And then you repeat that cycle every 2 to 3 hours. So it is very time consuming, it can be very exhausting, and that's why you should only be doing it under the guidance of a trained healthcare professional. Why would somebody triple feed? Triple feeding is a temporary thing. It's something we use when we are trying to preserve milk supply while troubleshooting why a baby may not be gaining weight. Sometimes it's because that's what the parent wants, but oftentimes it's because we are wondering if there's a problem with latching or milk transfer or milk supply, but because it is so exhausting, it really should be a temporary thing. Weighted feeds are a tool that some lactation consultants and pediatricians may use as a way to help investigate what's going on, but I don't want you to go out and buy a scale, okay? That's a way to drive yourself crazy. Checking your baby's weight has a place, but it really should be done under the guidance of a healthcare professional. I think that weighted feeds have a place. They allow you to collect data, and data can be helpful, but sometimes what I see is when parents have a scale at home, it increases anxiety because you weigh your baby before and after multiple feeds throughout a day. And the thing is, the weight changes based on whether or not your baby's pooped, whether or not your baby is fed. And Being fixated on those little changes can drive you crazy. Every baby loses weight right at the start, and I think sometimes when your pediatrician is asking you for that information and is weighing your baby, it can start to feel like that becomes a critical piece of information moving on forward as well. Obviously, for some babies, that's true. There are babies that are struggling to gain weight, and we want that data for those babies. But for a type A person who really likes information, I think that some of the apps and some of the tools that are available can really start to wear on you. They can drive you crazy, and you can have too much information. If you know yourself and you know that you're a type A parent that's going to fixate on trying to get that information, I want you to be careful about how many tools you're incorporating into the care for your baby. It's really easy to fall into this pattern of micromanaging, and that's not what we want you to do. We want you to enjoy your baby. I think one of the myths that I think is really important to bust is that somehow if you are not able to exclusively breastfeed your baby, you are somehow failing. I think as moms, we often think that our entire job is feeding our baby, and so when the baby is struggling to gain weight or struggling with milk transfer, you start to see that as a personal failure, and that's not true. There are so many reasons that a baby might fail to gain weight. If your baby is getting the calories that they need and having the opportunity to bond with you, if you're able to enjoy your baby, that's way more important than the type of milk that they're getting. There are benefits to breast milk, absolutely, but it's also true that there are benefits to having a parent that feels sane and is able to spend time with you and bond with you. At the end of the day, bonding with your baby is going to be the most important thing. One of the big lessons of parenting is learning that you can't control everything. We just do not have that much control over things. And that starts during pregnancy, right? You can have a birth plan, but then things happen. And that includes feeding your baby, how your baby's doing on milestones, and then later on, even with discipline and sleep. Your baby's percentile is not a reflection of you as a parent. The percentile is not a grade. So sometimes I think when people come into the office, they want their baby to be, at the 90th percentile, and that to them signals that they're doing well. The truth is, the percentile that your baby is a reflection of so many different factors, including the genetics, and you don't have control over that. One of the other myths that I want to bust is that somehow the number of ounces that you produce is a reflection of how well you're doing as a parent. Your baby doesn't care how they're fed. What they care about is that they are fed and that they're loved. There's actually research that shows that the thing that helps a child thrive long term is having an adult that is there for them and provides for them and is reliable. And that starts right at the beginning. If you are able to provide that for your baby, you're doing a great job. If I could tell every single parent that comes to see me one thing, it would be that you do not have control over so many things. We do not have control over how our baby sleeps, how our baby feeds, how they meet developmental milestones. Yes, on the margins, you can make a little bit of a difference, but this idea that somehow you have to do all the research and be fully prepared and have a plan for everything, I think leads to a lot of frustration for parents, because sometimes the way that you've decided to do something is not what your baby needs. I think this comes up a lot with this idea of how you feed your baby solids. If you're going to do baby-led feeding, if you're going to do purees, a lot of parents go in with a certain plan, and the trouble is not every baby knows the plan. Your baby hasn't read the book. And so if your baby needs something different, it can start to feel like that was a failure on your part rather than that you're willing to be flexible and to pivot and adjust to what your baby needs. Different parents need information given to them in different ways. We're all different. And some people need to read information, some people need to watch it, and I really love that Momcozy has different methods of giving you the information you need in the way that you need it. I'm really excited to be part of the medical advisory board for Momcozy because I think it will allow me to have an impact on new products that are developed and to make sure that they are science forward. Momcozy puts moms first.